In a New York City town hall, an 18-year-old kid from a slum is being investigated for supposedly stabbing his dad to death. Last-shutting contentions having been introduced, a noticeably exhausted judge educates the jury to conclude whether the kid is guilty of murder. On the off chance that there is any sensible uncertainty of his culpability, they are to return a decision of not guilty. The appointed authority further illuminates them that a guilty decision will be joined by an obligatory capital punishment. The jury reassigns to a confidential room, where the jurors spend a brief time getting familiar before they start pondering. It is promptly obvious that the jurors have proactively concluded that the kid is guilty, and that they intend to return their decision without getting some margin for conversation with the sole special case of Juror 8, who is the as it were not guilty vote in a primer count. He makes sense of that there is a lot in question for him to oblige the decision without basically discussing it first. His vote disturbs different jurors, particularly Juror 7, who has passes to a ball game that night, and Juror 10, who accepts that individuals from slum foundations are liars, wild, and perilous. The remainder of the film's center is the jury's trouble in arriving at a consistent decision. While a few of the jurors harbor individual biases, Juror 8 keeps up with that the proof introduced for the situation is incidental, and that the kid merits a fair consultation. He raises doubt about the exactness and unwavering quality of the main two observers to the murder, the extraordinariness of the murder weapon, a typical switchblade, of which he has an indistinguishable duplicate, and the by and large sketchy conditions. He further contends that he cannot with a clean conscience vote guilty when he feels there is sensible uncertainty of the kid's responsibility. Having contended a few focuses and gotten no ideal reaction from the others, Juror 8 hesitantly concurs that he has just prevailed with regards to hanging the jury. All things being equal, he demands another vote, this time by secret polling form. He suggests that he will swear off casting a ballot, and in the event that the other 11 jurors are as yet consistent in a guilty vote, he will submit to their choice. The mystery polling form is held, and a new not guilty vote shows up. This procures extreme analysis from Juror 3, who explicitly blames Juror 5, who had experienced childhood in a slum, of changing out of compassion for slum kids. Notwithstanding, Juror 9 uncovers that he personally changed his vote, feeling that Juror 8's focuses merit further conversation. Juror 8 presents a persuading contention that one of the observers, an older man who professed to have heard the kid holler "I'm going to kill you" without further ado before the murder occurred, could never have heard the voices as plainly as he had affirmed because of a raised train breathing easy, as well as expressing that "I'm going to kill you" is frequently said by individuals who don't in a real sense would not joke about this. Juror 5 changes his vote to not guilty. Before long subsequently, Juror 11 inquiries whether it is sensible to assume the respondent would have run away from the area, having cleaned the blade of fingerprints however abandoning it, and afterward returned 3 hours after the fact to recover it, having been left in his dad's chest. Juror 11 then changes his vote. Juror 8 then, at that point, makes reference to the man's subsequent case. After hearing the dad's body hit the floor, he had rushed to the entryway of his loft and seen the respondent running out of the structure from his front entryway in 15 seconds. Jurors 5, 6 and 8 inquiry whether this is valid, as the observer being referred to had suffered a stroke restricting his capacity to walk. Upon the finish of a trial, the jury finds that the observer could never have come to the entryway in sufficient opportunity to really see the killer running out. Juror 8 presumes that, in light of what he professes to have heard before, the observer should have just expected it was the litigant running. Juror 3, developing more bothered in the meantime, detonates in a tirade, "He's got to burn. He's slipping through our fingers." Juror 8 berates him, considering him a self-appointed public avenger and a sadist, saying he believes the respondent should bite the dust for personal desire rather than understanding the facts. Juror 3 yells "I'll kill him," and starts rushing at Juror 8, however is controlled by Jurors 5 and 7. Juror 8 smoothly counters, "You don't really mean you'll kill me, do you?" making his past statement. Jurors 2 and 6 additionally choose to cast a ballot not guilty, tying the vote at 6-6. Before long, a rainstorm raises a ruckus around town, evidently delaying the ball game for which Juror 7 has tickets, hence permitting him to unwind and focus with that timetable strain eased. Juror 4 keeps on expressing that he doesn't really accept that the kid's vindication, which was being at the movies with a couple of friends at the hour of the murder, in light of the fact that the kid couldn't recall what film he had seen when addressed by police not long after the murder. Juror 8 makes sense of that being under personal pressure can cause you to fail to remember specific things, and tests how well Juror 4 can recall the occasions of earlier days. Juror 4 recalls, with some trouble, the occasions of the past 5 days, and Juror 8 brings up that he had not been under personal pressure around then. In this way there was not a great explanation to figure the kid ought to have the memorable option the specifics of the film that he professed to have seen. Juror 2 raises doubt about the arraignment's case that the denounced, who was 5 feet 7 inches tall, had the option to incur the descending cut injury found on his dad, who was 6'2". Jurors 3 and 8 direct an investigation to check whether it's workable for a more diminutive individual to wound descending into a taller individual. The examination demonstrates the chance, yet Juror 5 then, at that point, makes sense of that he had grown up in the midst of knife fights in his area, and shows, through exhibiting the right utilization of a switchblade, that nobody such a great deal more limited than his rival would have held a switchblade so as to wound descending, as the hold would have been too off-kilter and the demonstration of changing hands also tedious. Rather, somebody that a lot more limited than his rival would cut naughty at an upwards point. This disclosure expands the assurance of a few of the jurors in their conviction that the litigant isn't guilty. Progressively anxious, Juror 7 changes his vote just with the goal that the consultation might end, which acquires him the anger of Jurors 3 and 11, the two on inverse sides of the conversation. Juror 11, a worker who has more than once shown solid enthusiastic pride, squeezes Juror 7 hard about utilizing his vote pointlessly, and in the end Juror 7 concedes that he presently really accepts the litigant isn't guilty. The following jurors to change their votes are Jurors 12 and the jury foreman, making the vote 9-3 and leaving just 3 protesters, Jurors 3, 4 and 10. Shocked at how the procedures have gone, Juror 10 goes into a fury on why individuals from the slums can't be relied upon, of how they are minimal better than creatures who happily kill each other off for no particular reason. His discourse irritates Juror 5, who turns his back to him, and individually the other jurors begin getting some distance from him. Befuddled and upset by this response to his castigation, Juror 10 go on in a consistently blurring voice and way, easing back and eventually stopping with "Listen to me. Listen." Juror 4, the main man actually confronting him, laconically answers, "I have. Now sit down and don't open your mouth again." As Juror 10 maneuvers to sit in a corner without help from anyone else, Juror 8 talks discreetly about the wrongs of bias, and different jurors gradually continue their seats. While those excess for a guilty vote are squeezed with regards to why they actually keep up with it, there is no sensible uncertainty. Juror 4 expresses his conviction that in spite of the wide range of various proof that has been raised doubt about, the reality stays that the one who saw the murder from her window across the road, through the passing train, actually remains as strong proof. After he brings up this, Juror 12 changes his vote back to guilty, making the vote 8-4. Then Juror 9, in the wake of seeing Juror 4 rub his nose, which is being aggravated by his eyeglasses, understands that, similar to Juror 4, the one who purportedly saw the murder had impressions in the sides of her nose which she scoured, showing that she wore glasses, yet didn't wear them to court out of vanity. Juror 8 shrewdly inquires as to whether he wears his eyeglasses to rest, and Juror 4 concedes that he doesn't wear them. No one does. Juror 8 makes sense of that there was consequently not an obvious explanation to expect that the observer turned out to be wearing her glasses while attempting to rest, and he brings up that on her own proof the assault occurred so quickly that she could not have had the opportunity to put them on. After he calls attention to this, Jurors 12, 10 and 4 all change their vote to not guilty. Right now, the last juror with a guilty vote is Juror 3. Juror 3 gives a long and progressively tormented series of contentions, finishing with, "Rotten kids, you work your life out." This expands on a more sincerely undecided prior disclosure that his relationship with his own child is profoundly stressed, and his resentment regarding this reality is the primary explanation that he believes the litigant should be guilty. Juror 3 at last blows his top and destroys a photograph of himself and his child, then unexpectedly separates crying and changes his vote to not guilty, making the vote consistent. As the jurors leave the room, Juror 8 assists the upset Juror 3 with his jacket in a demonstration of empathy. The film closes when the cordial jurors 8, Mr. Davis, and 9, Mr. McCardle, trade names, and every one of the jurors drop the town hall moves toward return to their singular lives. At no point ever to see each other in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.